Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm going to be commentating over a very special pre-recorded match that I played against Sam Mann, creator and tournament organizer of the Warhammer 40k Conquest Octagon WA Online Competitive League. As luck would have it, the two of us were paired against one another for the fourth week of the tournament. Though at this point in my LCG career, I've created a tremendous number of videos and interviewed what feels like innumerable tournament champions, my personal estimated total number of matches played is probably still under 20. So, while I frequently talk to the experts and feel like I have rather strong potential, I'm still missing a fundamental underlying understanding of a great many basic aspects and fundamental elements of gameplay that would still stand to make me a much more formidable player. So, I definitely make more than my fair share of mistakes and suboptimal plays during this video, and for that reason I ask that you please leave comments, constructively criticizing, leaving feedback, and making suggestions for how I could improve, because with your assistance, hopefully someday I can indeed reach the level of skill and experience required to become a truly competent tournament level player. So, if you enjoy this video and would like to see me play out and commentate more matches of my own, be sure to let me know in a comment. But in any case, let's get our video started with a very special match between myself as Ragnar Blackmane and Sam Mann as Eldorath Starbane. Alright, thank you very much for joining me for yet another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest played via Octagon. Today's match is going to feature myself playing as the Space Marines Warlord Ragnar Blackmane once again, up against Sam Mann, organizer of the Octagon WA Competitive League, playing as Eldorath Starbane, the Eldar Warlord. In taking a look at our planet layout, we have a very early win condition for either player. Planet number 1 is going to be Eloith, Planet 2 is going to be Atrox Prime, Planet 3 is Planum, Planet 4 is Iridial, and Planet number 5 is Ossus 4. In examining my opening hand, I do not actually opt to take a mulligan, whereas Sam inevitably does. I see a couple different things that I really like to see the way that this deck is constructed. Specifically, I have Blackmane's Hunt in my hand, one of two signature events that's going to allow me to commit my Warlord very heavily to planet probably number 2, just because we could see a victory condition as early as our third planet, so in being able to commit to the second planet each and every turn should I choose to do so, I've got a nice wide threat range, and seeing as how in previous videos I've not made the best use of Ragnar's reaction, that could potentially provide me with a fantastic opportunity to try to whittle away some of the relatively frail and fragile Eldar army units in order to just generate as much aggressive momentum as possible. I end up putting out an Honored Librarian to planet number 2 as my first action of the game. I happen to be the player holding the initiative token, and Sam, during his action, ends up putting a Warlock Destructor out to planet number 1. So that was definitely a little bit frustrating for me to see. I was definitely hoping for a much more frail and squishy deck when going up against the Eldar, and some sort of hyper-aggressive move like that is a little bit frustrating. Just in regard to the rest of the cards in my hand, I happen to have a lot of relatively cheap units that don't hit particularly hard. I end up putting out a copy of the Blackmane Sentinel, but apart from that, I just have command icons. I don't have any big daunting attacker to try to match or let alone best this Warlock Destructor played out at planet number 1, so already I can kind of see my hopes and dreams of a very early victory potentially being snatched away from me. I end up putting that Blackmane Sentinel to planet number 5 to try and reel in resources in order to try to fund some early game just economy, seeing as how I've got so many cards in my hand that are cheap, but I don't have enough resource tokens to play them. And then Sam quite conveniently answers my play to planet number 5 with an Incubus Warrior of his own, which happens to have 2 command icons, conveniently trumping my 1 command icon Blackmane Sentinel. I end up putting my Imperial Fist Siege Force to planet number 1 so that I can hopefully send Ragnar to planet either 1 or 2, potentially trigger my reaction to damage that Warlock Destructor, use the initiative token in my advantage, and then set myself up conveniently to try to kill that off. And if need be, I can also relocate my Blackmane Sentinel, seeing as how he's not really doing anything at the present moment in regard to winning me command. So things are already looking a little bit grim as we go into the very first command phase of the game. I end up sending my Warlord to planet number 1, hoping to trigger that reaction without needing to use up my copy of Blackmane's Hunt, and we end up seeing Eldorath being commit to planet number 5, so he of course triggers his reaction in order to exhaust my Blackmane Sentinel, and much to my chagrin, we end up seeing a copy of Foresight relocate Eldorath Starbane on the very first round of the game, which allows him to shift over to planet number 1 and conveniently exhaust my Imperial Fist's Siege Force, and seeing as how his Warlord and a Warlock Destructor are now both sitting at the first planet, that sets him up very favorably indeed to try to deal out a bunch of damage just as early as possible. In hindsight, I certainly could have relocated my Blackmane Sentinel, but at the present moment I wasn't exactly convinced it would be doing me much good. To me, it seemed as though the first planet here was entirely lost. In taking a look at my hand, I've got a Primal Howl. I took a moment to verify in chat that I don't actually have the opportunity to trigger Ragnar's ability. I don't have the ability to trigger Primal Howl just because I'd already been commit to the planet and then Eldorath came in. In regard to command, Sam ends up reeling in 2 cards and 2 resources relative to my 1 card and 1 resource, and at the present moment all I happen to have is 1 resource, 5 cards relative to Sam's 4 resources and 6 cards. And already at the onset of this match, with that Foresight play just being so absolutely early game debilitating, I felt as though I might as well start to throw in the towel at the moment, just because Sam is certainly a far more experienced player than I was, and in being paired against him for the 4th week of the online Octagon competitive WoW League, I was definitely not feeling very good about my chances going into this. In regard to the card that I ended up drawing, I netted 1 copy of Iron Halo, and in regard to shields, I've got 2 shield cards. I have 1 shield card. Combat is about to begin at the first planet. I had essentially lost all hope of my very early game victory condition, and seeing as how Sam has just a glut of cards and resources in hand, I was very much kind of conflicted in regard to this first planet. How should I try to approach combat here? Should I try to press my luck? Should I really try and use up all of these shields in my hand just to try and kill off that Warlock Destructor? Can I try to survive past the first round of combat so that my Imperial Fist Siege Force ends up readying? I think in retrospect I definitely should have pulled over my Blackmane Sentinel just because I do end up trying to be a little bit ballsy. Definitely was not my original plan to do so, but I end up attacking with Ragnar, dealing out a couple points of damage to that Warlock Destructor, and that happened to be very heartening indeed, just because unless he happens to have a total glut of 2 shield icon cards, I was starting to feel like I could potentially kill off that unit, even though I happen to have Ragnar here take a few points of damage in return. My thought here was that I could try to press my luck, I could try to be as aggressive as possible, even without having relocated my units, and then I was thinking that I could probably end up committing my Warlord to Iridial, our present planet number 4, a little bit later in the game. So I've already got 4 damage tokens accumulated on Ragnar, and now I'm very much conflicted. I choose not to retreat in hoping that I can kill that Warlock Destructor. I'm very much hoping that one of those 6 cards in Sam's hand does not happen to be a gift of Isha, and neither of us choose to retreat, so let's figure out what happened. I make sure to attack with my Imperial Fist Siege Force first, just to give Ragnar the opportunity to retreat if he needs to do so, and I was quite frankly shocked to see that Warlock Destructor outright destroyed by the Imperial Fist Siege Force. So at the present moment, I'm actually feeling pretty good about my decision to not relocate that copy of Blackmane's Hunt. I've still got plenty of cards in hand, so I just have Ragnar take a swing at Eldorath, and I just kind of see how things go. At the present moment, I chose not to retreat with Ragnar just because I knew that if he did end up pulling a Gift of Isha, he's going to be attacking for 3, I could shield for 2, and I would only ultimately end up taking 1 point of damage, and of course that would put me at 6, I would avoid being bloodied, and much to my horror, I do end up seeing a copy of Gift of Isha played in response to all of my units now being exhausted. So the Warlock Destructor re-enters play. It's a revitalized 3 attack, 4 hit point units, and seeing as how it's going to be leaving play at the end of the round, that forced reaction where Sam has to choose to pay resources is not going to be a detriment at all. So that was a very frustrating card to see. I end up getting rid of a copy of Primal Howl. I wanted to hold on to that Iron Halo just in case I needed to play that out onto Ragnar, just because he took so much damage in the very early game, and if I was discouraged before, rest assured I am extraordinarily discouraged at the present moment. So ultimately, the combat round comes to a close, and I am figuring out, do I want to get the hell off this planet? I choose yes, of course I do. I suppose when it all comes down to it, Sam essentially paid 2 resources and 1 card just to put on another point of damage onto my Warlord and end up having me discard that copy of Primal Howl, so it definitely would have been much better used by me, I think, to end up drawing 3 cards, but I definitely did not want to give up that one of, I think, 2 copies of Iron Halo in this deck, just in case Sam managed to lock down Iridial, and now I've got my Honored Librarian rather favorably positioned at the soon-to-be first planet, Aatrox Prime, but the problem there is Eldorath, of course, keeps exhausting units. So now my Imperial Fist Siege Force is going to be arriving exhausted, and seeing as how Sam is starting to establish a slow but sure economic lead against me, especially with that foresight, I was starting to feel like I'm already kind of on the back foot and things are going to get quickly worse. So I was discouraged that my aggressive playstyle was kind of bested, but now I'm going to be focused on how exactly can I get Ragnar to Iridial. I was thinking I could try to be safe. I could send him to Planet 4 or Planet 2 and then use Blackmane's Hunt to relocate to Iridial if it was safe, or I could go to Iridial and then shift away if it's not safe. So I've certainly got numerous different options here. Just a very small mistake from Sam Mann, who doesn't play Eldar very often. He ends up paying a resource for his Warlock Destructor, and of course it would have left play at the end of the round, so he compensates himself for that resource and discards that Warlock Destructor. So during the headquarters phase, we each ended up generating 4 additional resource tokens, drawing 2 additional cards. I ended up reeling in 2 different copies of Tactical Squad Cardenas, which are normally pretty useful, but seeing as how the Eldar player is definitely playing out anything but squishy units, as we see another copy of Starbane's Council played out to planet number 3, Iridial, which was extraordinarily maddening and frustrating to see. My tactical squads were not suddenly looking like the best draw. I would have loved some eager recruits or some drop pod assaults or indomitables or crushing blows, but at the present moment I just happen to have a lot of low-cost command units. Normally they're quite instrumental in establishing an early game economic lead, but it certainly seems as though I'm far from being able to do that at this point. I'm trying to figure out what exactly do I want to do. Planet number 1 looks okay, but if I don't back up that Honored Librarian, for all I know, Eldorath could swoop in with anything and essentially kill it very handily. So I'm trying to figure out what do I want to deploy to planet number 1. I've still got that Blackmane Sentinel at planet number 4 that I can relocate. And at the present moment, I'm trying to figure out, is there any way that I can try to get Ragnar safely to Iridial? He's got that Starbane's Council there, he's got the initiative token, but Ragnar happens to have only a single hit point remaining between him and dying. This is actually one of the only games on Octagon I've ever played without using Skype to speak over internet protocol with my opponent, so things are probably a little bit slower just because I'm doing a lot of thinking. I'm experimenting with Alt-D for the first time to indicate done, no actions. We end up seeing a copy of the Void Pirate played out to planet number 5, which happens to be Taurus, and that ends up posing a little bit of a problem in and of itself, because at the present moment, Sam's unit count is lower than mine, so even though he's establishing a strong economic lead, it's made all the worse for me because I'm sitting on 5 units relative to his 4. I've got 3 resources to his 2, 5 cards to his 6, but I'm trying to think. I want to keep on playing out units, but the more units I put out, the more likely Eldorath is going to be going to Taurus and generating a bunch of additional cards or resources to put more units into play. Eldorath certainly has all kinds of nasty events. And at this point, I'm just starting to feel a little bit frustrated. Just in desperation to try and get some additional resources, I put out a copy of Sanctioned Psyker at planet number 4, so in that case, I can either win some resources, or if I need to move my Blackmane Sentinel, at least I'll be preventing Sam from doing the same. But of course, Sam can't make my life easy. He has to put out a copy of the Slith Mercenaries, played out to planet number 4, a very timely play of that card, because having only 1 resource remaining, I certainly cannot use an action to steal that away from him, even though he himself happens to have 1 resource. I end up putting out a copy of the Rattling Deadeye to planet number 5, which is Taurus, in order to match his Void Pirate, and I think in retrospect I was actually kicking myself for doing that move, just because it seems in hindsight now that Taurus would have been the obvious location for him to send Eldorath, because once again my unit count is lower than his. Ragnar at the moment wasn't terribly interested in going to planet number 5, so I was thinking with that Rattling Deadeye, seeing as how it's going to get exhausted, it's not going to be winning me command at, say, planet number 2, it could just be exhausted by Eldorath. Eldorath could kill it, and then he could win Taurus all the same, and just, pull ahead even further than he already is. So at the present moment, we're both trying to figure out where exactly we want to send our warlords, and I think when it all comes down to it, I do end up sending Ragnar to Taurus, just because Sam, of course, has no idea probably just how strapped I am for resources and cards. I'm definitely feeling as though things are looking very bleak, but I'm trying to think that if instead of conceding, is there any way whatsoever that I can try to come back from this game? And maybe it doesn't seem like it just in viewing this video from an outsider perspective, but my spirit was absolutely crushed as of the first turn. And in wanting to protect Taurus at any and all costs, I end up sending Ragnar there. We end up seeing a very bad habit of mine, which is forgetting about units that were sitting in my headquarters, and in all honesty, I'm not sure I'd have made this exact same move, even though I should have, in my opinion, if I'd have remembered my Imperial Fist's siege force is sitting there in my headquarters. So Ragnar ends up triggering his reaction to deal 2 points of damage to Eldorath Starbane. Starbane, of course, triggers exhausting my Rattling Deadeye, and we end up seeing a second copy of Foresight, which moves Eldorath from planet 5 to planet 3, so Eldorath is now sitting at Iridial. He'll be sure to win the battle there entirely uncontested, unless I happen to draw some sort of crazy ambush unit or event. And at the moment, it's looking like the Eldar player actually doesn't do quite as well as I did in a command sense, so I was quite floored by that. Sam ended up drawing 1 card and 2 resources, whereas I pulled in 2 cards and 2 resources, and, much to my frustration, I ended up drawing a copy of the Catachan Outpost, definitely not doing me any good at the moment during combat, although it's not as if there are any big important combats that are going to be taking place. And I also ended up drawing a copy of the Rattling Deadeye, which is, it's nice. It's definitely nice to see, because I've yet to draw a single copy of Void Pirate. I've yet to draw a single copy of Rogue Trader. And between those two units, I either have 5 or 6 in this deck. I believe I also happen to have 3 copies of Promotion. I can't be sure, but I haven't seen any of those either. And the Eldar player is just able to bring so many low-cost command icons to bear against me. It just ends up making for an immensely frustrating experience. So at the present moment, I actually managed to capture Aatrox Prime, but of course Iridial is 2 planets away, so I do not have the opportunity to shoot anything at Planum or our Eldar player's HQ. The battle is won at Iridial, of course, entirely uncontested. Eldorath bounces back to his headquarters, and he removes all 4 points of damage from him. Ragnar at planet number 5 happens to take this opportunity to destroy Sam's Void Pirate, which I was quite pleased to have managed to successfully protect Taurus, seeing as how my Warlord was so incredibly wounded, and I was absolutely rejoicing that I didn't actually have to use any shield cards in order to save that planet. So I wasn't tremendously thrilled that once again I'm not exactly able to be as hyper-aggressive as I was hoping to be, but at the present moment, we end up seeing our headquarters phase. I draw 2 cards, I generate 4 resources, as does Sam, and I end up getting a copy of the Iron Guard Recruits as well as an Indomitable, which is incredibly important to see, seeing as how Ragnar happens to have 6 points of damage sitting there on him. So at the present moment, I'm trying to think, what exactly do I want to do? Do I want to try to recover in an economic sense, or do I want to really push that aggressive game still? I'm trying to contemplate the hyper-aggressive playstyle. How can I make Sam suffer? How can I kill off some of his units? Is there any way that I can manage to successfully capture Iridial? And at the present moment, I'm trying to figure out how exactly can I do that. I've got the Rattling Deadeye, I've got a copy of Catachan Outpost, I've certainly got quite a few units in my headquarters, and I'm trying to think, what can I put at Iridial that I can manage to kill some of Sam's guys? I've got the initiative token, so I can potentially bring a lot of damage to bear. If he sends Eldorath to Iridial, that could very well work in my favor, just because I'd be able to trigger that reaction in order to try to kill off his Starbane's Council. But yet again, this is another opportunity where I'm terrified of Gift of Isha. And what makes my life even worse is Sam ends up putting out a second copy of Starbane's Council to planet number 2, and what's immensely frustrating is, since I've got the initiative token, as soon as I attack, they attack me back, whatever unit happens to be exhausted, for 5. So I'm trying to think. I have 5 resources, 6 cards, I've got Iron Halo, I've got Indomitable. That would allow me to, basically ingest 2 different attacks, nullify them completely. Ragnar ends up being a prime target, even if I bounce him away from Iridial. So long as I win a combat at that planet, if I ultimately manage to heal, then that's going to be absolutely fantastic, just because Ragnar doesn't have to be present to benefit from that effect. So in trying to be a little bit ballsy and trying to be as aggressive as possible, I do end up putting out that copy onto Ragnar, just because even though that's what feels like a huge resource investment at this point, I feel like it's absolutely crucial that I try to keep him alive and just get as much benefit from his ability as possible. For our Eldar player, we end up seeing the signature support, the Aleatok Shrine, which happens to basically read, as soon as an Eldar unit moves, you can exhaust that support to exhaust it. So at the present moment, he doesn't have any mobile units, he doesn't have any units in his HQ to move to a planet, so that's not doing anything for him at present, but it only costs 1 resource, and seeing as how we're both down to 2 resources and 5 cards, I'm trying to think very carefully, what exactly do I want to spend my remaining resources on? I end up putting out a copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas just to try to put as many bodies onto Iridial as possible, and once again my thought process is Iron Halo is going to absorb 1 Starbane's Council attack, Indomitable can absorb another attack, and then if I have an opportunity to retreat, I can retreat with Ragnar. If I need to, I can just have a tactical squad end up dying. I can have 2 tactical squads end up dying. Ragnar could even potentially take a hit, I suppose, if he had to, and end up bloodied, just so that my Honored Librarian could try and kill off some of those Starbane's councils. And because I already have 1 technology icon, if I can win our present planet number 1, if I could win Iridial during the following round, then I could potentially pull this game around. Both players end up selecting a planet in which to commit their warlords after Sam puts a copy of Slith Mercenaries at planet number 5, Theron, which is going to allow him to reel in 2 resources. Yet another immensely frustrating play to see, just because he invested 2 resources and a card into something that's going to immediately earn him 2 resources. Ultimately, it looks like Sam is going to choose planet number 4 as his place of deployment, so he's trying to benefit from the ability of Taurus. And of course, I do send Ragnar to planet number 2, just trying to be as aggressive as I can possibly be. Sam ends up exhausting my Rattling Deadeye, and unfortunately, of course, Ragnar's ability is not able to trigger. And this is yet another, what feels like landslide command victory for Sam. I only pull in 2 cards and 1 resource, whereas Sam generates 1 card and 5 resources. So I've got 1 resource, 6 cards in total. Sam has 6 resources, 5 cards. I ended up drawing a copy of the Blackmane Sentinel and an Honored Librarian. So once again, nice combat units, but definitely not anything that's going to be helping me in a command sense. My units at Iridial are for the most part exhausted, but at least I'm happy to see that I've only got 2 different Eldar units that I'm up against. I'm very afraid of things like Gift of Isha, to be sure, but at the present moment I guess I'll have to see what Sam ends up playing. We don't end up seeing any actions at the first planet, and that allows me to pull in an additional technology icon. So now, Iridial here is very much going to be my win condition. I'm thinking that if I can just win this during the following turn, that would be absolutely fantastic. I end up triggering the battle ability at the planet Planum. That was our first planet with my Rattling Deadeye, but Eldorath ends up doing a copy of Foretell, so he cancels the same battle ability that would have allowed me to shift my Imperial Fist's siege force to Iridial in order to make it all the more likely that I would be able to potentially win at Iridial. So that was immensely frustrating to see. I don't really care that I could maybe put a few points of damage onto the exhausted Eldorath, just because if I don't end up winning at Iridial, then Sam will be able to pull damage off of whatever he'd like. But battle erupts at planet number soon-to-be 1 at Iridial. I do an area effect 1 volley. Sam assigns 1 point of damage to each of his units. He discards a copy of Nullify in order to shield one of those points of damage, and now it is Sam's opportunity to attack. No actions from me, of course. I just have my Iron Halo. I just have my Indomitable. Starbane's Council takes a swing at my nearly bloodied Ragnar Blackmane, and Iron Halo nicely mitigates the blow. Ragnar is my only unit left unexhausted, and at the present moment, I'm kind of at a little bit of a difficult decision, but I choose to have Ragnar just take a swing at that already wounded Starbane's Council, just because my copy of Honored Librarian can hopefully end up killing his entirely unwounded Starbane's Council in a single shot, but much to my dismay, we end up seeing a copy of the signature attachment Mobility discarded, which blocks all of that damage entirely, but it also clues me off to the fact that either Sam doesn't happen to have a 2 shield icon card, or if he does have something like a Gift of Isha, he's simply not willing to use it. We see his second copy of Starbane's Council take a swing at Ragnar Blackmane, and of course I use my Indomitable to shield that blow, and at the present moment, I suppose I at least need not worry about Gift of Isha, because we see all of the units ready. I believe, I can't check in the video, but I think the top card of his discard pile is is a Void Pirate, but the topmost Eldar unit would be a Warlock Destructor, so definitely a lot of nasty stuff here. I end up retreating with Ragnar Blackmane. He did his due diligence, he did his duty in that Iron Halo, and we see a very surprising, very frustrating action played out by Sam. We see a copy of Archon's Terror banish my Honored Librarian, and that was very nasty to see, and he's now managed to create a bit of a death trap for these two Tactical Squad Cardenases. I was very much reliant upon that Honored Librarian to really be the unit that's going to bring a lot of firepower to bear and kill off those copy of Starbane's Council. So, we have another one of my copies of Tactical Squad Cardenas launch an Area Effect 1 volley. It ends up successfully dealing out a point of damage to each of his units. His Starbane's Council takes a return swing and absolutely obliterates my Tactical Squad, and now it's going to be my opportunity to attack. I unfortunately don't have any events, anything worthwhile to play in my hand, and even if I did, at the present moment I don't happen to have any resources at all. I'd have killed for a crushing blow at the present moment, but unfortunately, I was not so lucky to have drawn one. I trigger one more area effect volley, I end up destroying one of his copies of Starbane's Council, and then I end up managing to wound his other copy. So if I'd have had a crushing blow, this would have been an absolutely perfect opportunity for me to win Iridial, but of course, in having drawn through the top 16 cards of my deck alone, I am not so fortunate as to come across either copy of Crushing Blow. My Tactical Squad is destroyed, and therefore that planet is going to be won. And once again, Sam is able to benefit from Iridial in removing all accumulated damage from his copy of Starbane's Council. I managed to take a swing with my Imperial Fist's Siege Force, dealing out 2 points of damage to his Eldorath Starbane, and now Sam is trying to decide, does he want to retreat? Our combat round has come to a close. I've got a 1-1 attacker, I've got a 2-2 attacker in my hand. I only have one shield icon card. Sam happens to have 2 cards and 4 resources, and he's trying to think, does he want to press the attack? He certainly had far fewer units than I did, but I suppose in hindsight he must not have a Gift of Isha or something like that, just because that would have been an absolutely fantastic effect with which to use to try to destroy all of my units at that planet and then potentially win that battle ability. I suppose if he'd have killed all of my units, then he would have had more units than I, so he would not have ultimately benefited from that ability. So, I suppose, whether he retreated, whether he'd have invested in that event, he just had to ask himself, would it have been worth the investment just to get rid of that Deadeye, just to get rid of that Imperial Fist Siege Force, at the expense of likely taking some additional damage onto his Warlord? Much to my frustration, we see yet another copy of Starbane's Council played out to Iridial, and this is starting to get immensely frustrating for me. So I could win the game if I end up getting one technology icon. Sam only happens to have one technology icon in total, no material, no strong point, and I'm trying to think, is there any way that I can possibly capture Iridial? He's got 2 copies of Starbane's Council. He's got the initiative token. I've only got 4 resources. I've got units in my HQ that'll be arriving exhausted. I finally drew a copy of the Eager Recruit. I've got a Catachan Outpost, which is starting to look pretty appealing since I've got units kind of spread out all over the battlefield at the present moment. I've got a Blackmane Sentinel, which I could try to put out somewhere and then relocate it if I need to. So I've certainly got quite a few options in my hand. I've got a copy of Primal Howl that would be super useful if I managed to successfully commit to the same planet as Eldorath, but at the same time, it's looking really, really dangerous for me, especially considering my opponent happens to be the one holding the initiative token. I've only got 2 shield cards in total. I've got that Blackmane's Hunt, which could potentially save me in a sense, but it's still just looking immensely frustrating, immensely difficult, and I still feel as though I'm essentially just being crushed and strangled by Sam. I've got 4 resources and 7 cards to his 5 resources and 3 cards, but it just still felt at the moment like he's got such an economic lead against me, and my units are just so albeit myriad, frail and weak relative to his enormously hard-hitting Warlock Destructors and Starbane's Councils, that I just feel like I'm completely struggling. I do end up putting out a copy of my Iron Guard recruits to Farron, current planet number 4, in order to match command with his Slith mercenaries there, just because I'd like to try and deprive him of those resources if at all possible. And then I was thinking that I could maybe put out my Blackmane Sentinel to that planet, and then if I have to, I could relocate them. If I win command, great. If I only match command, then that's fine. And Sam ends up putting out a copy of the new, unique Autarch Salakia. And this, if I hadn't already made up my mind that Iridial is an abandoned cause, this definitely sealed the deal here. So under no circumstance now am I going to be sending my units to Iridial, so I have to kind of reconsider my victory condition. What could I do to potentially win this game? Once again, I feel like I might as well just give up, concede, call the game here, but it looks like planet number 2, planet number 3 both happen to have strong point icons, and Sam is still quite a ways away from winning. Seeing as how our current planet number 1 is the only other technology icon possessing planet, if Sam starts to sweep, he'd have to win the next 3 planets to win through strong point, or he'd have to win through to the last planet to win through material. So I'm trying to think, is there any way that I can try to pull a victory together? Can I scrape my forces together to potentially win through strong points, to potentially win through material? So I don't feel like I'm entirely out of the game yet, but things are definitely not looking good. And even at planet number 2, perhaps my most appealing Warlord committance destination, he's still got some pretty nasty units in that 3-attack Incubus Warrior and that 2/2 Slith Mercenary. So I've got Iron Halo, but I sure as hell don't have an Indomitable. And at the present moment, I'm just trying to figure out, is there absolutely anything else I can do during deploy that is going to give me the best possible chance to try to win this one? In hindsight, this would have probably been a stellar opportunity to actually purchase his Slith mercenaries at Farron, but ultimately I choose to play out a copy of my Blackmane Sentinel to planet number 3, Taurus, just so I can make absolute certain that Sam is not able to activate that battle ability and then reel in a ton of resources. So at the moment, I'm trying to play some sort of game of distributing my combat units between planet number 2 and planet number 3 so that I can hopefully set myself up nicely for an eventual victory condition. The more units I kind of have spread out at multiple planets, then I could potentially put my Catachan outpost into play and end up doing very well for myself. Sam's final deployment happened to be a Void Pirate put out to planet number 5, and that's not only going to allow him to win command there, thanks to me not purchasing his Slith mercenaries, but it's also going to generate him an additional resource token. In regard to committing warlords, Sam picked planet number 1, Iridial, just, I suppose, to make absolute certain that I'm not able to wish away all that damage from Ragnar, and I happen to pick planet number 2. I'm playing a little bit conservatively, resting assured that I can bounce between planet number 2 and planet number 3 as necessary with that copy of Blackmane's Hunt, use Iron Halo to basically absorb one attack, and then retreat in order to prevent Ragnar from being bloodied. Sam ends up winning 1 card and 3 resources, whereas I also get 1 card and 3 resources. Had I actually managed to pull that Slith mercenary away from him, that would have been an additional 2 resources for me and 3 fewer resources for Sam. So I definitely do not claim to be an expert player by any means. We see Sam actually pay 1 resource in order to give Autarch Salakia mobile, and he shifts it over to planet number 2, and I suppose this is going to be an attempt to bloody my Ragnar Blackmane. Fortunately for me, I will happen to have the initiative token at this planet, and during command I ended up drawing a copy of Indomitable, which is going to be absolutely crucial. Sam ends up capturing Iridial, our first planet, entirely uncontested. He nets a total of 1 material, 1 strong point, 1 technology icon, icon, but now no player can win through technology icons. We see Battle Erupt at Ossus 4. There's going to be stealing 1 resource on the line, and as my opening action, wanting to leave Ragnar ready to retreat if need be, my Blackmane Sentinel destroys his 3-attack Incubus Warrior. We see his Slith Mercenaries take a swing for 2 at my Ragnar Blackmane, and I trigger my copy of Iron Halo in order to negate that attack. I end up having next to no ready units, so just in buying some time and wanting to leave Ragnar ready as long as possible, I opt to swing first with my Sanctioned Psyker at, it doesn't matter which of his units, but just the Slith Mercenaries, and of course in response, Sam swings with Autarch Salakia to my Ragnar Blackmane. So a very timely draw, this Indomitable. I end up paying 1 resource, I end up negating that attack, and this is once again yet another opportunity where I'm really hoping that there's no Gift of Isha that's going to be coming to play in order to result in the bloodying of Ragnar. I end up taking a swing at Autarch Salakia with Ragnar in order to deal it out 2 points of damage, and then that is going to bring us to an end of the very first combat round. Thankfully, Sam indicates he has no actions whatsoever. Of course, I choose not to use any actions. I do happen to have an Eager Recruit in hand, but I choose not to use it unnecessarily. And we see Sam's forces retreat, which is going to mean I get to trigger this battle ability, I get to steal 1 resource from Sam, and that's as soon as we see our headquarters phase begin here, that's going to put me at a grand total of 7 resources and 7 cards, whereas Sam is going to be at 5 resources and 4 cards. And at this point, I start to realize that the Eldar economy is not quite as strong as I had been thinking it was. I still need to capture the next 2 planets if I want to win the game earlier than our final planets, but things are starting to look up ever so slightly. Sam certainly has a tremendous number of units, but just in regard to having so many copies of Blackmane Sentinel out on the board, knowing that I can relocate those as necessary, things are starting to look up a little bit for me. Knowing that I have that copy of Blackmane's Hunt, if I commit to planet number 1, I can bounce to planet number 2, and vice versa. I've got that copy of Primal Howl with which to draw some additional cards, and I've got 2 copies of Honored Librarian in my hand. In addition to that Catachan Outpost, I'm just starting to feel a little bit better about my ability to distribute my damage-dealing units throughout the battlefield here. And of course, having drawn a copy of Crushing Blow, I'm starting to feel very good in that Sam doesn't have a tremendous number of cards in hand. I've certainly got a very formidable presence in regard to command at our remaining planets that we happen to see in play, so I'm starting to think I might potentially be able to salvage this one. If I manage to get any damage through, that Crushing Blow could be absolutely instrumental in making sure that those Starbane's councils or the Autarch Salakia end up being killed, and at the present moment I'm starting to pay a lot of attention to how many resources I have relative to how many resources Sam has. I definitely don't have a lot of events that I've drawn that are expensive, so if I could end up stealing, in a very timely sense, a copy of Slith Mercenaries, then that could work out very well for me. And to my immense frustration, we see Sam's 3rd copy of the Slith Mercenaries played out to our planet number 2, Taurus, and once again, I definitely am going to want to try to protect that planet to the best of my ability. I end up putting out a Catachan Outpost for the cost of 2 resources, and at the present moment, both planet number 1 and planet number 2 are looking very good for me. I've got a Blackmane Sentinel at either planet, I have a Rattling Deadeye and Honored Librarian at either planet. Sam ends up putting out a copy of the Bloodied Reavers at planet number 2, but knowing that I've got that Blackmane's Hunt, knowing that I've got the initiative, knowing that all 4 of those units from his HQ are going to arrive exhausted, I'm starting to think I need to be able to deal out as much damage as I possibly can prior to the end of the first combat round, just so I can really, really punish him, and unless he happens to have a copy of Gift of Isha or 2, or another immensely frustrating Archon's Terror, it looks like I'm starting to be set up relatively favorably to deal out quite a bit of damage, and even if I can't completely annihilate all of his forces that are going to be arriving exhausted, I can potentially deal out quite a bit of a crippling blow, and once again, I'm definitely paying a hell of a lot of attention to how many resources resources Sam and I both have, just because if at any point he ends up making some sort of poor decision, plays some sort of event, and then I can, in a very timely sense, steal away one of his Slith mercenaries, it's not just a body that he doesn't get to attack with, but it's something that I myself get to attack with. To my immense frustration, we see a promotion played out on his Slith mercenaries at planet number 2, and that allows his units to actually trump my command there. So he's got a grand total of 5 command icons relative to my 4 command icons, and that's going to be 1 resource, 1 card that I'm not going to end up getting. At this point, both players have passed. I'm trying to decide, do I want to go to planet number 1? Do I want to go to planet number 2? Ultimately, it does not matter whatsoever because of my copy of Blackmane's Hunt, but I think I'm going to ultimately pick planet number 2, just because Taurus is more important to me than Ossus 4, just because I'm going to need that red material icon too, so if I don't need to spend my copy of Blackmane's Hunt, then if I use it as shields, that's fine. It looks as though Sam actually picks planet number 2, so I don't actually have to use my copy of Blackmane's Hunt to make sure I can show up at the same planet as Eldorath, and now this is going to be just an immense battle, probably the decisive battle of the game. Sam certainly arrives with a ton of different units. His Aleatok Shrine manages to exhaust. It readies one of his copies of Starbane's Council, and now there are a lot of different simultaneous reactions all taking place. I trigger a copy of Primal Howl to draw 3 cards, and to my immense frustration, I end up getting a copy of Ragnar's War Camp and 2 copies of Blood Angels Veterans. Not only are they not events, they don't have shield values, but they're immensely expensive, and I'm very much starved for resources. I end up triggering Ragnar's ability to target the Bloodied Reavers. He ends up discarding another copy of Nullify in order to make sure that that's only 1 point of damage, and at the present moment, I did not choose to use that copy of Crushing Blow. In hindsight, I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but I didn't necessarily feel compelled to play it at the moment. I was thinking that I might potentially be able to do something devious with my Rattling Deadeye if I needed to. Sam, like a total gentleman, not only exhausts my Honored Librarian, but just reminds me that if I want, I could move over my Blackmane Sentinel, and in all honesty, I'm not sure if I'd have remembered to do that, so very excellent sport Sam is in reminding me about that effect. To my frustration, I only managed to win command at 1 planet. Sam nets himself 1 card, 4 resources, relative to my 0 cards and 2 resources. I certainly have quite a bit of resources to fund events. The only problem, of course, is I don't have any events to use those resources on. I've got 4 resources, 7 cards. Sam has 6 resources and only a single card. I'm absolutely convinced at this point that it must be a copy of Gift of Isha, and therefore, to my own novice inexperienced assessment, I feel as though I choose my attack targets in this battle very wisely. Sam allows my forces at planet number 1 to go entirely uncontested, and I manage to capture Ossus 4. Sam ends up removing 1 resource from himself, but I do not believe I actually remember to add a resource. I was far too focused on the battle at Taurus to think about actually triggering that battle ability. So once again, Sam being a total excellent sport, but, you know, to my pitfall or to my weakness, I don't actually trigger any battle ability there. I don't gain that resource token, but the initiative token is in my hands, and I'm presently trying to decide how exactly are attacks going to be doled out. I do not have any actions. I trigger my Rattling Deadeye, and then I wait with bated breath. Does Sam have any action in response to my using that Catachan outpost? He indicates he does not, and therefore I attack. I'm trying to figure out what is his final card. Is he going to use his shields? And he does not. His Aleatok Shrine happened to ready that copy of Starbane's Council, and my Rattling Deadeye, attacking for 3 during the ranged skirmish round, manages to absolutely obliterate it. So at this point, that was an extraordinarily heartening thing to see, and now I'm trying to think, okay, if he's got a copy of Gift of Isha, I can deal with that. I've got 4 attackers left. Sam happens to have 3 of his own. I've got 2 different 1-value shield cards in my hand. He doesn't necessarily get to attack for a lot. I attack during the ranged skirmish round, and now I have the initiative token. My Blackmane Sentinel exhausts, and I managed to successfully kill that copy of Bloodied Reavers, and at this point I can scarcely believe what exactly is happening. It seems as though a lot of things are going right. So I got rid of his potentially 5-attack Starbane's Council, I got rid of his 4-attack Bloodied Reavers. Now Sam has an opportunity to attack. He takes a swing with his Slith Mercenaries, targeting Ragnar Blackmane, who's 1 damage away from being bloodied, and of course I simply opt to trigger my Iron Halo and negate that damage entirely. That sets me up quite favorably to start dealing out attacks of my own, and now, in thinking that Sam likely has a Gift of Isha in hand, I'm wanting to ensure that the final target I destroy prior to the very end of the combat round is as low value a target as possible. I attack his Starbane's Council here just because I'm fairly convinced he's not going to be shielding against any of this damage, and I want to deal out quite a bit of damage, and then as my very final attack, end up killing some relatively weak target. So I'm trying to think, what exactly do I want to do? Do I want to wound his Starbane's Council? Do I want to kill off his Autarch? I'm not quite sure what exactly my order of events is going to be. I do ultimately decide upon his Starbane's Council, and once you run out of shields, it's amazing how easy the combat math gets. I end up putting 2 points of damage onto that Starbane's Council, and now it is Sam's opportunity to attack. I've got 5 resources, I've got a hell of a lot of cards. He ends up exhausting Eldorath, and I end up using the now unnecessary to keep copy of Blackmane's Hunt. So because the game is likely going to come down to the following round's battle at Taurus, if I win it, I would win the game. I get rid of that copy of Blackmane's Hunt because I now perceive it as being entirely unnecessary. Now all of the Eldar forces are exhausted. I've got 2 attackers left. I end up destroying his copy of Starbane's Council. It goes to the top of his discard pile. I indicate no actions. Sam indicates no actions, and I now use my final attack not to kill his Autarch because that would be a 3-attack value unit being returned to play, but I end up destroying his copy of Slith Mercenaries. And if I remember correctly, I believe that Gift of Isha is the topmost Eldar card, so it's probably actually didn't make any difference whatsoever, but by golly, I had myself convinced that I was being very, very clever in the order in which I was attacking, so I suppose in retrospect I wasn't as clever as I thought I was, but the combat round comes to a close. Surprisingly, I do not see a Gift of Isha played by Sam, and I use this opportunity to retreat with Ragnar Blackmane. All the units at the planet ready, and now we're going to be beginning another round of combat. All of our units are ready. I've got the initiative token. My honored librarian would have loved an opportunity to attack, but Sam uses that to quite timely play an Archon's Terror, and I fail to realize until a moment too late that Sam is actually entirely out of cards. My Rattling Deadeye quite conveniently destroys his copy of Slith Mercenaries that happen to have only 1 remaining point of damage. His unexhausted copy of Slith Mercenaries ends up taking a swing at my Blackmane Sentinel, and now I'm trying to think, should I save this crushing blow? No, I do ultimately decide to use it as shields, and this is yet another instance in which Sam ends up being just a complete sir. I opt to attack his Eldorath with my unwounded copy of Blackmane Sentinel, and then I ask, hopefully after not too long, I say, could I please take that back and attack with my wounded copy? I'm entirely out of shields in my hand. That would have been a great opportunity for him to kill my already wounded copy of Blackmane Sentinel, so I ask Sam, is it okay if I take that back? And of course, like a complete gentleman, he says that I can. I'm a complete novice and noob, so he cuts me some slack there. He ends up using his combat turn to retreat Eldorath. He doesn't want to potentially take more damage. He doesn't want to risk a copy of Crushing Blow bloodying Eldorath. And therefore, I use my final combat actions here to kill off his lingering copy of Slith Mercenaries, and I'm going to be able to win this battle at Taurus. Sam doesn't have any cards to end up playing out actions, and at the present moment, I cannot trigger Taurus's battle ability, but Sam's army is essentially depleted, and all of a sudden, in taking a look at my headquarters, things are looking extraordinarily good indeed. I've got a total of 9 resources and 7 cards in hand as we move into our final round. Sam happens to have 7 resources and a meager 2 cards. One of those cards ends up being a copy of Spirit Seer Erithal, but considering I've got 2 copies of Honored Librarian in my headquarters, I've got that Rattling Deadeye with my Catachan Outpost. I've got 9 resources to fund all kinds of nasty events. I'm trying to think at the moment, what exactly do I want to do? Do I want to try to starve him of command? Do I just want to deploy a ton of combat units to the first planet? I'm trying to think. Sam has 4 resources. Does he have a Doom in hand? Is it really going to matter? Because I can potentially, if he doesn't put out any additional army units into play, I can simply put out a bunch of units to that first planet. I could put out an Honored Librarian. I could put 2 additional copies of Blood Angels Veterans. Sam ends up putting out a Warlock Destructor to planet number 1. That was his final card in hand, and he calls out good game. So Sam concedes. Sam has forfeited. An extraordinarily well-played game on Sam's part. An extremely nail-biting experience down to the final round. I think it was absolutely mind-blowing how, due to the very first round, his simple playing of Foresight and tapping 2 of my units, winning so much command so early on, I was completely ready to forfeit, completely ready to concede as early as turn number 1, but in playing relatively intelligently, in really trying to ride the line between Ragnar being, at the brink of death and absorbing as many attacks as possible, I was able to end up pulling this one out. So Iron Halo completely putting in work, a couple very timely Indomitable plays, and I suppose just trying to deal out as much damage as possible, being as aggressive as possible, ended up working out for me. When my initial hyper-aggressive playstyle did not quite work out, I readjusted my strategy. I tried to win at Iridial. When that didn't work out, I kept on trying different things. I tried new things. So an immensely tense match, an immensely stressful match, just tremendous nail-biting match played with something like 3 or 4 spectators. So once again, I'll just toss this out there. Extraordinarily well played by Sam. Thanks to him for letting me record this match. Probably the closest, the most tense, the most nail-biting match of Conquest I've ever played. So, as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so. If you enjoyed this content, then consider sharing this video, as the more players eventually see stuff like this, the more players might enjoy what they see, the more players might get smitten with Conquest, and for all we know, the more players might eventually join our Conquest community. If at any point you'd like me to record, spectate, commentate a match of your own, be sure to get in touch with me through Twitter or through Facebook. And of course, if at any point you'd like to help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be both honored and humbled were you to check out my Patreon. So I definitely make no claims whatsoever to be an expert. I'm still very much a novice when it comes to actually playing Conquest. At the point of recording this match, I still have under 20 games played, so your feedback, your constructive criticism in the comments section is not just welcome, but strongly encouraged. So once again, I'll just end this video by saying thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.